The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched out like a crystal cathedral, its walls made of pure light that pulsed with the heartbeat of the galaxy. Inside this magnificent chamber, 47 different alien species sat in chairs designed for their unique forms. Some breathed methane through gills, others required suits filled with acidic gas, and a few existed as pure energy contained within crystalline shells. Ambassador Zektar of the Hegemony paced before the assembled crowd, his green scales rippling with anger. He stood 7 feet tall on powerful legs, his yellow eyes burning with rage as he spoke to the council. The Hegemony controlled 12 star systems and had never faced a real threat in over 300 years. Those humans destroyed 3 of our mining colonies, Zektar hissed, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. They came from nowhere with their crude ships and turned our installations into floating debris. My people are dead, and our mineral operations have stopped completely. The other council members shifted in their seats. Most of them had heard stories about the humans, but had never taken them seriously. These creatures had only recently discovered how to travel faster than light, emerging from their small blue world like insects crawling out of a crack in the wall. General Korth of the Militant Alliance slammed his massive fist on the table, causing the crystal surface to ring like a bell. He belonged to a warrior race that had conquered dozens of worlds through pure military might. His people stood 8 feet tall, covered in thick, armor-like skin that could stop most energy weapons. We should have crushed them when they first left their homeworld, Korth growled. My fleets could have turned their entire system into space dust before they had a chance to spread. The other aliens murmured their agreement. The humans had only 23 colonies spread across 12 star systems, a tiny territory compared to the vast empires represented in this chamber. Most council members owned more worlds than the humans had settlements. In the far corner of the Great Hall, an ancient figure remained silent. Elder Vexney belonged to the Preservation Caste, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Her people had been traveling between stars when most of the current council members were still crawling in primordial swamps on their homeworlds. Vexney had compound eyes that could see across multiple light spectrums, and her thin body was covered in fine silver hair that moved like liquid metal. She had lived for over 2,000 years and had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The humans must be stopped before they become a real threat, declared Chancellor Morden, the elected leader of the council. He was a tall, thin creature with blue skin and large black eyes. They have already proven they can defeat our individual fleets. If we allow them to grow stronger, they might challenge our authority. I agree completely, said Ambassador Zektar. We must strike now while they are still weak. My intelligence reports show they have only 200 warships defending all their colonies. We could overwhelm them with sheer numbers. The council members began talking among themselves, discussing the best way to eliminate the human threat. Some suggested orbital bombardment of their worlds, while others preferred a blockade that would slowly starve them into submission. Elder Vexney finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of millennia. I strongly advise against attacking the humans. The entire chamber fell silent. The Preservation Caste rarely involved themselves in military matters, preferring to study ancient ruins and preserve historical artifacts. When they did speak on such issues, their words carried significant weight. Surely you jest, Zektar said, his scales shifting to a darker shade of green. These primitives cannot threaten civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. That is precisely why they are dangerous, Vexney replied calmly. My people have encountered species like the humans before. We have detailed records of similar situations throughout galactic history. General Korth leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow across the crystal table. What are you trying to say, old one? I am saying that the humans possess something most of us lost long ago during our evolution towards civilized behavior, Vexney explained. They have desperation combined with creativity. When such species face complete destruction, they do not simply accept their fate. They fight back with methods that defy all logical prediction. She gestured to the holographic display showing human territory. Look at how they have already adapted to our technology. 3 months ago, they were using primitive chemical rockets. Now they field energy weapons that can penetrate hegemony shields. They learn from every encounter and improve their capabilities at an alarming rate. But they are still outnumbered 1,000 to 1, protested Ambassador Zektar. No amount of desperation can overcome such odds, can it not? Vexney asked. In our archives, we have records of a species called the Devourers. They were a small, peaceful race that lived on a single world. When the Crimson Empire decided to harvest their planet for its rare minerals, they expected easy conquest. The chamber grew quiet as the ancient being continued her tale. The Devourers had no military, no weapons, and no experience with warfare. But when faced with extinction, they transformed themselves into something their enemies could not predict or counter. They used guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and suicide attacks that crippled the Crimson Empire's war machine. What happened to them? Asked Chancellor Morden. The Crimson Empire fell within 50 years, Vexney said simply. Their civilization, which had lasted for 3,000 years, was reduced to scattered refugee fleets. The Devourers had learned to think like their enemies and exploit weaknesses that civilized minds could not imagine. General Korth scoffed. That was different. The Crimson Empire was already declining. We represent the combined might of 47 species. Even if the humans fought with perfect coordination, they could not threaten us all. Or perhaps, Vexney. Agreed. But tell me, General, are you prepared to sacrifice your homeworld to test that theory? The question hung in the air like a poisonous gas. Each council member began to consider what would happen if the humans somehow survived the initial assault and decided to strike back at civilian targets. You give them too much credit, Zektar insisted. They are animals who happen to stumble upon space travel. They lack the discipline and organization of truly civilized species. Animals can be the most dangerous opponents, Vexney warned. A cornered beast will fight with desperate fury that no rational creature would attempt. The humans have already demonstrated this behavior in their conflicts with individual species. She activated a holographic display showing recent battle footage. Watch how they fight. They do not follow accepted military doctrine. They attack supply lines instead of engaging fleets directly. They target infrastructure rather than military installations. They strike at our weaknesses instead of matching our strengths. The footage showed human ships moving in unpredictable patterns using captured alien technology in ways their original designers never intended. It was chaos, but it was effective chaos that had already claimed victory against superior forces. This is exactly why we must act now, General Korth declared, before they become even more dangerous. If you attack them with the intent to destroy, Vexney said quietly, you had better succeed completely. Because if even one human world survives your assault, they will not rest until your empires are reduced to ashes. The council members exchanged worried glances. The ancient being's warnings were legendary for their accuracy, but this seemed impossible. How could a species that had been spacefaring for less than a century threaten civilizations that had lasted for millennia? What do you propose? Asked Chancellor Morden. Leave them alone, Vexney replied. Allow them to develop naturally. In time, they may become valuable allies rather than dangerous enemies. Impossible, Zektar hissed. They have already proven they cannot be trusted. They attack without warning and show no respect for established territorial boundaries. Then, make your choice, Vexney said, settling back into her chair. But remember my words when your worlds burn. The vote was called, and the decision was unanimous except for one abstention. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council would gather at the edge of human space and launch a coordinated assault designed to eliminate the human threat once and for all. As the council members filed out of the chamber, each returning to their homeworlds to prepare for war, Elder Vexney remained seated. She had done what she could to prevent the coming disaster, but fear and pride had overcome wisdom. In the depths of space, Human colonies continued their daily routines, unaware that the greatest military force in galactic history was mobilizing to destroy them. But in hidden shipyards and secret facilities, human engineers worked frantically to prepare for the storm. They knew was coming. The galaxy was about to learn why predators should never corner their prey. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display with growing worry. The ship floated in the darkness between two star systems, its hull painted black to avoid detection by enemy sensors. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring alien communications and preparing for the storm they all knew was coming. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Amy Walsh from her position at the communications console, "we are receiving another transmission from the outer colonies. Long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements near the galactic border." Jake nodded grimly. For 3 weeks, human intelligence had been tracking alien military preparations. The reports painted a terrifying picture of coordinated action across dozens of species. Every major alien empire was mobilizing their fleets for what appeared to be a simultaneous strike against all human territories. "What is our current defensive status?" Jake asked his tactical officer, Commander Ryan Torres. "All colony defense platforms are online and ready, sir," Ryan replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "The orbital shipyards are working around the clock to produce new vessels, but we are still outnumbered 50-1 at minimum." Jake felt the familiar weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. The Defiance was one of only 12 heavy cruisers in the human fleet, and each ship carried the hopes of billions of colonists scattered across human space. These people had left Earth seeking new opportunities among the stars, and now they faced extinction at the hands of alien empires they had never even contacted. Down in the engineering section, Chief Engineer Lisa Brooks supervised her team as they installed the latest modifications to the ship's weapon systems. The aliens possessed superior technology, but humans had proven remarkably skilled at reverse engineering captured equipment and improving upon it in unexpected ways. "The new particle beam arrays are ready for field testing," Lisa reported over the internal communication system. "We managed to increase power output by 30% using the energy coupling design from that hegemony cruiser we captured last month." Jake allowed himself a small smile. The aliens consistently made the mistake of underestimating human adaptability. Every battle, every defeat, every captured piece of technology taught them something new about their enemy's capabilities and weaknesses. "Sir," Amy interrupted, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Patricia Kane wants to speak with all colony commanders immediately." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the stern face of Admiral Kane. Behind her, Jake could see the bustling activity of the Strategic Command Center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth. The facility had been constructed in secret over the past 2 years as human leaders prepared for the inevitable conflict with the galactic powers. "Captains," Kane began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment, "our deep space intelligence network has confirmed that the Galactic Council is planning a coordinated strike against all human colonies simultaneously. They intend to end this war before it truly begins by using overwhelming force." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The human colonies had survived previous alien attacks through superior mobility and guerrilla tactics, but a coordinated assault involving multiple species would be devastating. The aliens had thousands of ships and unlimited resources, while humanity possessed only determination and creativity. "However," Kane continued, "our reconnaissance missions have identified something very interesting about our enemies. The Council species have grown comfortable over millennia of peace and prosperity. Their military doctrine has not evolved in centuries, and they have never faced an enemy willing to use unconventional tactics." Commander Torres leaned forward in his chair. "What are your specific orders, Admiral?" Kane's expression hardened like steel. "If they want total war, we will give it to them. But we are not going to fight by their rules or meet them in traditional fleet engagements. Operation Prometheus is now officially active. Each colony commander will receive detailed instructions within the next hour. Jake had heard whispers about Operation Prometheus in the command briefings, but the specifics had been classified at the highest levels. The plan apparently involved tactics that conventional military thinking would consider impossible or suicidal. The aliens expect us to defend our colonies like fortress worlds, Kane explained. They expect us to mass our fleets and fight desperately to protect our civilian populations. They expect us to behave like every other species they have conquered throughout their history. The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in. They are wrong. We are not going to defend static positions against overwhelming odds. We are going to evacuate our colonies and turn this conflict into something they cannot understand or counter. As the transmission ended, Jake turned to address his crew. These men and women had volunteered to serve on the frontier, knowing they might never see Earth again. They had families on the colony worlds, friends who would be affected by whatever was about to happen. You heard the Admiral, Jake said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling in his mind. We are not just fighting for our colonies anymore. We are fighting for the future of the human species. The aliens think they can intimidate us into surrender through superior numbers and technology. Amy looked up from her station. Sir, what exactly does Operation Prometheus involve? Jake accessed the classified files that had just arrived from Earth Command. As he read through the details, his expression grew more serious. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and completely unlike anything in standard military doctrine. We are going to disappear, he said finally. Every civilian, every piece of vital equipment, every research facility, every military asset that matters. We are going to evacuate everything of value and leave the aliens nothing but empty buildings to destroy. Ryan frowned. But sir, what about the colonists? We cannot just abandon millions of people. We are not abandoning them, Jake replied. We are relocating them to hidden facilities that have been under construction for the past 2 years. Underground. Bases on airless moons, hollowed-out asteroids, concealed stations in the outer systems. Places where the aliens will never think to look. Lisa's voice crackled over the communication system. Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures from the direction of the galactic core. Multiple fleets are moving toward our territory. Jake nodded. The attack would begin soon, and humanity would face its greatest test, but they would not face it as helpless victims. They would face it as predators who had learned to think like their enemies and exploit their weaknesses. Begin evacuation. Procedures, Jake ordered. All non-essential personnel are to be transferred to the hidden facilities immediately. Military assets will relocate to the asteroid fields and prepare for Phase 2 of the operation. What is Phase 2? Amy asked. Jake smiled grimly. We are going to teach the aliens that there is a difference between conquest and survival. They want to destroy us, so we no longer need to worry about protecting anything. We are free to become something they cannot predict or counter. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had all heard stories about what humans were capable of when pushed to desperation, but they had never imagined they would be the ones to test those limits. Sir, Ryan said quietly, are we really going to attack their homeworlds? We are going to do whatever is necessary to ensure human survival, Jake replied. The aliens chose this path when they decided to attempt genocide. Now they will learn what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die quietly. As the Defiance prepared to implement Operation Prometheus, similar conversations were taking place on ships throughout human space. Colony commanders received their orders and began the massive logistical operation of relocating entire populations to hidden refuges. The aliens were coming with overwhelming force, expecting to find desperate defenders clinging to doomed worlds. Instead, they would find empty colonies and an enemy that had vanished into the darkness of space. The war was about to begin, but it would not be the war that either side expected. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, creating a sight that would have terrified any civilized species in the galaxy. 3,000 warships representing the military might of 47 different worlds moved toward human territory with the precision of a clockwork machine. General Korth commanded the massive assault from his flagship, the Eternal Glory. The enormous dreadnought stretched for 2 miles from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and surrounded by escort vessels that individually possessed more firepower than entire human fleets. "Begin the bombardment sequence," Korth ordered from his command throne, his massive form radiating satisfaction. "Start with the outer colonies and work systematically inward. I want every human installation reduced to molecular debris." The alien fleet had divided into 7 attack groups, each targeting a different cluster of human colonies. Their plan was simple and brutal. Overwhelming firepower applied simultaneously across all human territories would prevent any coordinated resistance or evacuation attempts. The first wave of attacks proceeded exactly as the aliens had planned. Human defense platforms, though surprisingly well armed for such a primitive species, could not withstand the concentrated firepower of ships that had been designed to fight fleet actions against equally advanced opponents. Colony after colony fell silent as orbital bombardments turned their surfaces into seas of molten glass. The aliens watched with satisfaction as human cities disappeared in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. This was how civilized warfare was conducted: swift, decisive, and completely overwhelming, but something was fundamentally wrong with the entire situation. The human defenders were not behaving as any rational species should when faced with extinction. Instead of massing their forces for desperate last stands or attempting to negotiate surrender terms, they seemed to be retreating systematically toward the inner systems. "Sir," reported Navigation Officer Zulfan from his position at the sensor station, "the human ships are not engaging our forces. They appear to be falling back in organized groups toward their core territories." General Korth examined the tactical displays with growing confusion. The human fleet was clearly outmatched and facing complete annihilation, yet they were not fighting with the desperate fury that cornered animals typically displayed. Instead, they were conducting what appeared to be a planned withdrawal. "Cowards," Korth muttered, his lip curling in disgust. "They abandoned their colonies to save their own miserable lives. Continue the advance and pursue them to their homeworld." What the alien commander could not possibly realize was that the human colonies had been completely evacuated 3 weeks earlier. Every civilian, every piece of vital equipment, every data storage device containing scientific research had been relocated to hidden facilities scattered throughout asteroid fields and rogue planets in the outer darkness. The installations that the aliens were systematically destroying were nothing more than empty shells, abandoned structures left behind as bait to draw the enemy fleets into predetermined positions. The humans had sacrificed their visible assets to gain tactical advantage on the bridge of the Defiance. Now, hiding in the gravitational shadow of a gas giant's largest moon, Captain Morrison watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The alien fleet had spread out across multiple star systems, dividing their forces exactly as human strategists had predicted they would. "Phase 1 is complete," he reported to Admiral Kane through an encrypted communication channel. "The enemy has taken the bait completely. All human fleets are in position and ready to begin Phase 2. Kane's voice crackled through the secure transmission. "Excellent work, Jake. The aliens have made the same mistake that every successful military force makes eventually. They have become predictable. Begin Phase 2 immediately." Throughout human space, vessels that had been drifting apparently powerless suddenly came to life. These ships had been positioned weeks in advance, disguised as debris or disabled hulks floating along the aliens' predicted supply routes. The enemy had ignored them completely, focusing instead on the more obvious targets. The humans struck simultaneously across dozens of star systems, but they did not attack the heavily armed warships that expected battle. Instead, they targeted the support vessels, fuel depots, communication relays, and supply convoys that kept the massive alien fleet operational. Commander Torres smiled grimly. as he watched hegemony supply ships explode in brilliant flashes on his tactical screen. They never expected us to target their logistics network. Classic mistake for a force that has grown accustomed to fighting conventional battles. Within 6 hours, the coordinated alien assault had devolved into complete chaos. Individual fleet groups found themselves cut off from resupply and unable to communicate effectively with their command structure. The mighty war machine that had seemed unstoppable began to break down as its supporting framework collapsed, but the humans were not finished with their unconventional approach to warfare. As the alien fleet struggled to regroup and establish new communication links, they received a transmission broadcast on all frequencies throughout their territory. Captain Morrison's face appeared on every alien viewscreen, his expression cold and completely lacking in the fear or desperation that conquered species typically displayed. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiance hummed with quiet efficiency. "To all alien forces currently occupying human space," Morrison began, his voice carrying across the light years with crystal clarity, "you have made a grave tactical error. You believe that destroying our colonies would break our will to fight and force us to surrender." The transmission shifted to show detailed star charts marking the locations of major alien worlds. Every fleet commander recognized the systems displayed, and many felt their blood turn cold as they realized the implications. "Instead, you have freed us from the burden of defending fixed positions. We are no longer constrained by the need to protect civilian populations or preserve infrastructure. We are no longer limited by the conventional rules of warfare that govern civilized species." The star charts updated to show human fleet movements with clear trajectory lines pointing toward the heart of each alien empire. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was bringing the war to their enemies' home territories. We are now free to demonstrate what humans are truly capable of when pushed beyond the point of desperation. Morrison continued, "You wanted to see our species when we have nothing left to lose. You are about to get that opportunity." The transmission ended with a final image that sent shockwaves through every alien command center. Human ships, no longer disguised or hidden, moving through hyperspace toward targets that every alien commander would recognize as their own homeworlds. On the bridge of the eternal glory, General Korth stared at the blank screen in stunned silence. His massive fleet had been designed to crush human resistance through overwhelming force, but instead he found himself commanding scattered groups of ships that were running low on fuel and ammunition. "Sir," his communication officer reported with barely concealed panic, "we are receiving priority transmissions from Militant Alliance Command. Human forces have been detected approaching our core systems." Korth felt something he had never experienced. In 3 centuries of military service, genuine fear. His people had conquered dozens of worlds through superior firepower and tactical coordination, but they had never faced an enemy willing to abandon all defensive positions and launch unrestricted attacks on civilian targets. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Their entire fleet was barely 200 ships. We destroyed their colonies." "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "it appears we destroyed empty buildings. The humans evacuated everything of value before we arrived. Our intelligence was completely wrong about their capabilities and intentions." Similar scenes played out across the alien fleets as commanders realized they had been drawn into a trap. The humans had sacrificed their visible assets to position themselves for a counterattack that would target the very heart of alien civilization. The war that was supposed to end human expansion had instead unleashed something that the galaxy had never seen before, a species with nothing left to defend and everything to avenge. The aliens had sought to destroy humanity through overwhelming force, but they had instead created an enemy that would stop at nothing to ensure their mutual destruction. In the depths of space, human strike forces accelerated toward their targets, carrying weapons and tactics that would soon teach the galaxy why desperate predators were the most dangerous opponents of all. The first alien world to fall was Hegemony Prime, the industrial heart of Ambassador Zektar's empire. The planet had stood unconquered for over 800 years, protected by orbital defense networks that could destroy entire fleets. Those Defenses were designed to repel conventional attacks from other civilized species, but they were completely unprepared for the human approach to warfare. Captain Morrison led the assault personally. His ship, modified with stealth technology that had been reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels and improved with human innovation, the Defiance slipped through the orbital defenses like a ghost, avoiding the massive weapon platforms that could vaporize a cruiser with a single shot. "Remember the mission parameters," Morrison told his Marines as they prepared for planetary insertion. "We are not here to massacre civilian populations. Our target is the infrastructure that keeps their civilization functioning. Every power plant we disable, every communication hub we destroy, sends a clear message that their government cannot protect them." Sergeant Kevin Murphy, a veteran of the early colony wars, checked his equipment one final time. "Understood completely. Sir, precision strikes against military and government targets only. We want them to feel helpless, not hopeless." The human assault teams descended toward the planet's surface using captured alien technology that made them invisible to most detection systems. They had studied intelligence gathered over months of careful observation, learning the layout of critical infrastructure and the behavioral patterns of the various alien species. Hegemony Prime was a world of gleaming metal cities connected by massive transportation networks. Millions of aliens lived in towering structures that reached toward the sky, completely dependent on the technological systems that provided power, water, and communication across the entire planet. The humans struck simultaneously at hundreds of locations. Power generation facilities suffered mysterious explosions that sent cascading failures throughout the electrical grid. Communication networks went silent as their control centers were infiltrated and destroyed from within. Transportation systems ground to a halt as their automated guidance systems were infected with viruses. Designed by human programmers, the psychological impact was devastating beyond anything the aliens had ever experienced. The hegemony had never faced warfare on their home territory, and their citizens had grown accustomed to absolute safety and prosperity. They watched in horror as their technological civilization began to crumble around them. In the capital city, Ambassador Zektar stood in his government complex watching reports flood in from across the planet. Military commanders who had been confident in their orbital defenses now admitted they had no idea how the humans had reached the surface undetected. "How many enemy soldiers are on our world?" Zektar demanded from his security chief. "We estimate no more than 500, came the terrifying reply. 500 humans are systematically dismantling a civilization that houses 12 billion citizens. Zektar felt his scales shift to a sickly yellow color. The humans were not conquering his world through superior numbers or technology. They were destroying it through precise application of force against targets that civilized warfare traditionally left alone on the bridge of the Defiance. Now orbiting the crippled planet, Morrison received a priority transmission from Admiral Kane. Her face appeared on the main screen, backed by the familiar sight of Earth's Strategic Command Center. "Status report, Captain. Hegemony Prime has been neutralized, Admiral. Their planetary defense grid is completely offline, and their industrial capacity has been reduced by 75%. More importantly, we have captured their central intelligence database." Kane's expression remained carefully neutral, but Morrison could see the satisfaction in her eyes. "What intelligence did we acquire?" "Complete locations of every major alien military installation, supply depot, and command center within 100 light-years. We also have detailed information about their political structures, economic dependencies, and military capabilities." "Outstanding. Work. Begin Phase 3 immediately. I want their war-making capacity crippled before they can adapt to our tactics." Across the galaxy, human strike forces emerged from hyperspace near targets that the aliens had considered absolutely secure. The enemy had expected conventional fleet battles in the empty spaces between stars, but instead they faced surgical strikes against the foundations of their civilization. The militant Alliance's primary weapon manufacturing centers fell silent, as human saboteurs disabled their automated production lines. Years of careful preparation allowed the humans to infiltrate facilities that had been considered impregnable, using captured security codes and detailed intelligence about alien security procedures, the crystalline collective's mining operations throughout 3 star systems ground to a halt as their computer networks were infected with viruses that turned their own automated systems against them. Mining equipment designed to extract precious metals from asteroids instead began tearing apart the space stations that controlled them. The Aquatic Federation's underwater cities lost all power as human teams struck at their geothermal power plants. The aliens who lived in the crushing depths of their ocean worlds found themselves trapped in darkness, unable to communicate with the surface or call for help. Each attack was carefully planned and precisely executed. The humans had learned to think like their enemies, studying their weaknesses and exploiting them without mercy or hesitation. They struck at targets that conventional military thinking would never consider, crippling entire civilizations through attacks on infrastructure rather than military forces. Commander Torres monitored the tactical displays from his station on the Defiance, watching as reports came in from strike teams across the galaxy. Sir, we are receiving confirmation that Operation Scythe has been successful. 17 major alien industrial worlds have been neutralized with minimal human casualties. Morrison nodded grimly. The humans had discovered that civilized species possessed a critical vulnerability. They had become completely dependent on complex technological systems to maintain their way of life. Destroy those systems, and even the most advanced civilization would collapse into chaos. What is our next target? Morrison asked. Admiral Kane has identified the Nexus Prime Communication Hub as a priority target. If we can disable their primary coordination center, the remaining alien fleets will be unable to organize any effective response. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The crystalline halls that had once symbolized their authority now felt like a tomb as reports of devastation poured in from across their territories. "This is complete madness," declared Ambassador Zektar, his form trembling with rage and terror. "They are not fighting a war, they are systematically dismantling our entire galactic civilization." Elder Vexney observed the proceedings with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of countless empires. She had tried to warn them about the dangers of cornering a desperate species, but they had refused to listen. Now they faced the consequences of their arrogance. "What do you propose we do?" asked Chancellor Morden, his voice hollow with defeat. "We must attempt to negotiate with them," Vexney replied calmly. "Before they reduce all our worlds to the same state as Hegemony Prime. Negotiate with primitives?" General Korth slammed his fist on the council table, but his gesture lacked its former conviction. "We do not surrender to inferior species." "Then you will die as an inferior species," Vexney said quietly. "Because that is what we have become. We forgot that technological advancement means nothing without the will to use it effectively. The humans have demonstrated that civilization is merely a thin shell that can be cracked by those desperate enough to try. The humans had done more than win military victories. They had shattered the fundamental assumptions that held galactic civilization together. They had proven that advanced technology and superior numbers meant nothing against an enemy willing to abandon all conventional limitations. The war was far from over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The aliens could still destroy human worlds, but the humans had already proven they could destroy alien civilizations. The question now was whether anyone would survive the conflict that both sides had helped create. The war ended not with a final battle or the surrender of defeated fleets, but with a single transmission broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy. The message originated from Earth itself, transmitted from the seat of human government with the full authority of the entire species behind every word. Admiral Kane stood before the assembled leaders of humanity in the Great Hall of the Global Defense Council. Her uniform bore the insignia of the newly formed Terran Space Command, and behind her hung the flags of Earth's United Nations in solemn display. The weight of representing an entire species in this moment pressed heavily on her shoulders. To the members of the Galactic Council and all alien species currently at war with humanity, she began, her voice carrying across the light years to reach every inhabited world in known space. This conflict is officially over. Your fleets have been scattered across the galaxy, your supply lines have been severed, and your industrial capacity has been reduced to a fraction of its former strength. The transmission displayed tactical maps showing the current military situation throughout alien space. The once mighty fleets that had seemed unstoppable were now depicted as scattered remnants, cut off from support and unable to coordinate their actions or maintain their equipment. Your governments told you that this would be a quick war against primitive savages who had barely learned to travel between stars, Kane continued. They assured you that superior technology and overwhelming numbers would guarantee swift victory. They were wrong about everything. The display changed to show the devastation that human forces had inflicted on alien worlds. Industrial centers reduced to smoking ruins, communication networks lying silent, and military installations transformed into twisted metal. The scope of destruction was staggering, achieved by human forces that numbered less than 50,000 soldiers. We did not fight this war to conquer your worlds or enslave your populations, Kane explained, her tone remaining steady despite the magnitude of what she was discussing. We fought because you gave us no choice. You sought to destroy us completely. And in doing so, you forced us to become something we never wanted to be. The transmission showed images of human colonies before the war, peaceful settlements where families had tried to build new lives among the stars. Then it showed the same locations after the alien bombardments, fields of glass and twisted metal, where millions had once lived and worked. You taught us that, in this galaxy, there is no safety in peace, no security in isolation, and no protection in being reasonable. You taught us that survival requires the willingness to destroy our enemies completely before they can destroy us. Kane paused, allowing the implications of her words to reach every alien leader watching the broadcast. We return to you now the same gift you tried to give us, the knowledge that your civilization can be ended. Your leaders promised you that. Your advanced technology and superior numbers made you invincible. They lied. The Admiral's expression softened slightly, but her words remained firm and uncompromising. We propose a different path forward from this point. Humanity will withdraw from all occupied alien territories within 30 days. We will cease our attacks on your infrastructure and allow you to begin rebuilding your damaged worlds. The offer hung in space like a lifeline thrown to drowning swimmers. After months of systematic destruction, the humans were offering to stop their devastating campaign and return to their own space. In return, Kane continued, you will formally recognize human sovereignty over all star systems we currently claim. You will establish diplomatic relations with Earth and agree to binding treaties that guarantee the safety of human colonies and trade routes. The display showed the proposed territorial boundaries, with human space clearly marked and surrounded by buffer zones that would remain neutral. The terms were surprisingly reasonable for a species that held all the military advantages. But understand this clearly, Kane said, her voice taking on a harder edge that sent chills through every alien leader watching. We are no longer the same species that you first encountered. The war you forced upon us has changed us permanently. We have learned to think like you, to fight like you, and to be as ruthless as necessary for survival. The final images showed the human fleet as it existed now, no longer desperate defenders of scattered colonies, but an organized military force capable of projecting power across the galaxy. Ships that had been built in hidden facilities, crewed by soldiers who had learned to wage war without limits, and commanded by officers who understood the true cost of survival. We offer you peace based on mutual respect and recognition of consequences, Kane concluded. But if you ever again threaten human worlds, if you ever again seek to destroy what we have built, you will face not desperate colonists fighting for survival, but the full military might of a species that has learned to wage total war. The transmission ended with a simple countdown timer showing 30 days. After that deadline, the human offer would expire. and the war would continue until one side or the other was completely destroyed. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council sat in their crystalline chamber, contemplating the choice they had been given. The humans had demonstrated that their vaunted civilization was as fragile as glass when faced with an enemy willing to strike at its foundations. Elder Vexney rose slowly from her seat, her ancient form bearing the accumulated wisdom of 2,000 years. "I warned you," she said quietly to the assembled representatives. "I told you that if you attacked them with the intent to destroy, you had better succeed completely. You did not succeed. Now you must live with what you have created." Chancellor Morden looked around the chamber at the other council members. Many of their homeworlds lay in ruins, their military forces scattered or destroyed, their economies crippled by the loss of industrial capacity. The humans had shown them that all their technological advancement meant nothing against an enemy willing to abandon conventional limitations. "What is the Council's decision?" he asked, though everyone already knew the answer. The vote was unanimous. Every species that had participated in the attack on humanity voted to accept the human terms and end the war immediately. 3 days later, the first human ambassador arrived at Nexus Prime, Captain Jake. Morrison stepped off his ship onto the same crystalline platform where alien leaders had once planned the complete destruction of his species. Now those same leaders waited nervously to negotiate the terms of peaceful coexistence. Morrison carried with him the formal treaty, documents that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The agreement established humanity as an equal power among the stars, protected by the demonstrated ability to reduce any aggressive species to primitive conditions. But more importantly, the treaty contained a warning that would echo through galactic history. The document stated clearly that humanity had learned the true nature of survival among the stars, and that any species threatening human existence would face total retaliation without regard for conventional rules of warfare. The galaxy had learned a new truth that would influence interstellar relations for centuries. Sometimes the greatest threat comes not from the strongest predator, but from the most desperate prey. Humanity had proven that when pushed to the brink of extinction, some species do not simply accept their fate. They ensure that their enemies precede them into extinction. The war was over, but its lessons would never be forgotten. The aliens had sought to destroy humanity through overwhelming force, but they had instead created something far more dangerous, a species that understood the true cost of survival and was willing to pay any price to ensure its continued existence. In the vast cosmos, balance had been restored through the most ancient of lessons. Never corner a predator unless you are prepared to face the consequences of its desperation.